Quote, Today I have completed religion for you. I have graced you generously and I have chosen for you Islam as your religion. Quran 5-3. I was born in 1967 in a small town Sauerland County, Germany. My younger brother and I grew up in the countryside, where my parents and grandparents lived in a two-family house. My grandfather he used to be the principal of an elementary school. My father wanted to be a guard forester, but instead became a teacher in secondary school. He still loves nature very much, but over the years he seems to have lost his love by Jesus Christ, which was very disappointing for my grandmother, who had always been a firm believer. She was a member of a small church in which she attended actively and tried very hard to provide a true Christian example for his offspring. My grandfather, on the other hand, could hardly be called a believer. This was something my grandmother only discovered after marriage. The frequency regular to the church proved not to be a test of faith. Until today, after each religious service, my grandparents engage in heated discussions about the belief Christian in general and the content of the last sermon in particular. This situation it affected his 3 children. Today only one of them is a member of the church. My mother, on the other hand, comes from a family in which devotion to the faith was key. Belief has never been subject to discussion. In fact, nothing was subject to discussion. My mother, for being the most new, was never taken seriously. What else would a daughter be good for? Until today she regrets that they did not allow her to learn another profession. And it was given as sure that my mother would marry my father. Once a teacher's child, it was a good catch. Shared faith would ensure a happy marriage, but during the early years the marriage became unstable due to religious tensions. While my grandmother, the first woman, was elected to the Council of Elders of the church, my parents, one of the each time, he left the church. And the day came when they had nothing left to common. Then, after 20 years of marriage and countless attempts to marry, both agreed to throw in the towel, and in 1986 the marriage was dissolved. At that time my brother and we were not very attached to religion, which added to my grandmother's sadness. We joined Christian youth groups and took Bible classes, but none of them we became a member of the church. In fact, we weren't even baptized. The church to which my family belonged did not baptize children, only adults who they consciously decided in favor of Christ. When we reached the age necessary, we both decided not to be baptized. Not that I wasn't interested in religion. Religion has always fascinated me. Christianity offers an acceptable approach, in the belief in a single God, who contacted humanity sending prophets. In this way God taught people who they were and how they should interact with each other and with their environment. But I soon realized that the Christian values could be adjusted easily. What Christian theology teaches: every human being is full of sin. Original sin is a burden on us since birth. God sent His Son into the world to suffer and to die on the cross and save ourselves from this burden of guilt. Several questions remained no answers for me. The Son of God, who was supposed to be a man and at the same time the true God, prayed to be saved from crucifixion, but to be saved. Who did He pray so earnestly? His life became a turning point in the history, which divides peoples into before and after Christ. Belief in Him is the only way to be saved. He Himself did not say, "I am the way, the truth, and the truth." Life. No one comes to the Father except through me. John chapter 14 verse 6. With the death of Jesus, life eternal lost her terror. Christianity preaches that God is love. So how is there a hell? The devil, which used to be a means of oppression to keep the members of the church in order, was retired. The values of Christianity were very restricted to love your neighbor. Since I don't harm anyone, everything is fine. Jesus says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish, but to fulfill." Matthew chapter 5 verse 17. The difference is not seems to be so big in modern Christianity. The commandments are outside. The church follows the time, although not fast enough for some of its members. The Bible is almost no longer weight. It is likely that some truth can be found in it, but who decides which is true or not? Who decides what is valid or not? The church? The theologians? Or is it every man for himself? It is not each one fabricating their own belief that according to your own knowledge and conscience? Let's be honest and stop to call the result Christianity. Let's call it Claudism or Susanism. Christian believers will protest now, of course. They will say that there is a common basis. Well, where is she? The true revelation, the words that God spoke to Jesus of Nazareth, where are? In the Bible there is no chapter dedicated to them. Central phrases of faith that the churches divides derived from historical accounts and letters, decided during the theological conferences or just declared state doctrine. And how many you have heard, you cannot understand this. You just have to believe. I believe God has given us brains so we can use them. And I believe that a message from God, when it is questioned, has to offer more answers than that. That is what I said to my religious teacher when my high school class spent the weekend in a monastery before graduation. They called them days of reflection. The teacher surprised me with his answer. He said, "God will not give up you. You'll see." In the end he was right, though he probably would have imagined something a little different. My interest in God and in the religion reawakened when I came across Islam. After completing my high school, I moved to a city to study economics in the university. At the time I thought that this field of study would be good for get a job. I wasn't very interested in the subject, but I thought that my studies would pass very quickly. Instead, I was subjected to a very depressing atmosphere, with crowded auditoriums and boring classes given by boring teachers. As students in these classes, we were busy with other things. See what the tall blonde in the third row is wearing today. Do you have fire? Student life, on the other hand, was fascinating from the beginning. Until that moment I had lived in a small town. Even during my year as an exchange student USA, I stayed in a small town that forced me to visit the church at the same time. Sundays. Now, at university, it seemed to be a new world opening up to I got to know a lot of different people and I enjoyed discussing God and God. The world. Among my new acquaintances were some foreign students, who were Muslims. Then the subject of Islam came up. I was usually amused by the thought that there were people who seriously followed a law of the Middle Ages. But in reality everything looked very different than thought. The life of foreign students in Germany has nothing in common with a tale from the Arabian Nights. At first I still asked my neighbors Muslims in student dormitory, joking, why don't tomatoes had to be cut following a ritual? Or why a Muslim, who remembers God before eating and thanks God after the meal, does not make the same thing when you drink your beer at the bar? But the more I learned about Islam, the less funny these jokes became. In fact, religion Islamic was not as foreign to me as I had always thought. Rediscovered many of the components I had always liked in Christianity. One, of course, it was belief in God. Islam is strictly monotheistic. There is only one God. God in Arabic is Allah. The expression means nothing other than the God, and is also used in the Arabic version of the Bible.